Adam Brown. I'm the local nature recovery strategy lead for Surrey Nature Recovery, and I'll just be spending the next 10 minutes talking about the sort of national context for local nature recovery strategies and where they came from, what a local nature recovery strategy actually is, and what Surrey Nature Recovery is. So national context, there's a lot of text on this screen, but that is, yes, the Environment Act, and following that, the Environment Improvement Plan has set out a lot of legally binding targets. And then the sort of peak target that has got the most headlines was set out at sort of the International Biodiversity Summit, which is 30 by 30, and that commits us to protecting a minimum of 30% of land and sea for biodiversity by 2030. It's an extremely ambitious target when we consider that we're only at about 8.5% at the moment. And so we've got a lot to do over the next 6 years. But then more specifically for targets, we've got biodiversity on land. There is a national target in England to restore 500,000 hectares of wildlife-rich habitat outside of protected sites by 2042. So we will be getting a sort of guidance target for what we need to deliver in Surrey to help the country get towards that 500,000 hectare target. And yeah, the list goes on and on. There are a multitude of targets we'll be considering and trying to meet. These do then also go into species. So there is a big headline target for halting the decline in species abundance by the end of 2030. So what Mike was just talking about there is a genuine legal commitment for us as a country to try and bend the curve on that nature loss. And then once we've bent that curve, getting it back up and increasing by 2042. And then additionally, focusing on those species that are most at risk of extinction and trying to avoid any more extinctions. So the generic term that seems to is put about at a national level is the Nature Recovery Network, and this was something that the Wildlife Trust as an institution did propose several years ago, and luckily was picked up by the government. And this is sort of the context that that every single bit of nature across the country does work in a sort of cohesive network, and all sort of adds its own individual benefits to nature. So on this particular, I like this tube map because it does include everything from sort of local wildlife sites to school grounds and old railway sidings. So it really does bring to light all the different opportunities that are available to us. So in terms of how we actually deliver that nature recovery network, the proposal is local nature recovery strategies. So these are the sort of the building blocks that will collectively come together to deliver that national network. So Surrey is one of 48 local nature recovery strategies that will be created across England. They are designed to be locally led. So the Surrey County Council was nominated as a responsible authority last year. And although we are leading it, we are working amongst all of the partners. As you'll see on today's webinar, we've got the Nature Partnership, Surrey Wildlife Trust as our core partners. And yes, one of the core principles is that they are to be delivered from broad engagement with multiple stakeholders, and they need to consider delivery of wider environmental benefits. So those nature-based solutions that Mike was just talking about at the end of his talk should underpin the consideration of where we put nature recovery. We've got some core principles for our development, that is transparency. So ensuring that we can show how partner contributions have been considered and how decisions have been made. So when we produce that final map, everyone has confidence that it does truly represent everyone's views where possible. Inclusivity, we do need to enable everyone with an interest in nature recovery to be involved wherever possible. And Lisa will be talking about that later on in her talk. And then clear communication, and this is something that I think we're already struggling with, is ensuring that the language that we use is not exclusionary and that we can make sure that it is available to everyone. And that's, I think, quite different difficult in an industry that's been quite, I think, insular in terms of the environment. And so, yes, if I do have any acronyms that are legacy acronyms in this presentation, then do type them in the chat and I will explain what they are. So local nature recovery strategies, what actually are they? They are a spatial or mapped strategy, so that will identify locations to create or improve habitat, most likely to provide the greatest benefit for nature and the wider environment. So at its core, we begin by mapping the most valuable existing areas for nature, and that will be published soon. And then the engagement process. Through the engagement process, we'll agree priorities for nature's recovery, and then the final product will be a map or spatial plan that will have specific proposals for creating or improving habitat for nature. And it's all expressed in this lovely flowchart, which I have open every day. But I will just go through it all a bit more in a very paint-led iterative approach of what this actually means. So our first step, as I said, is mapping what we already have. So first we take our core national designations. So these are those lovely acronyms there: special areas of conservation, special protected areas, special sites of scientific interest, and national nature reserves. So they are all the sort of top tier wildlife designations that we have across the country. So we pull them into our map. Then we have our local designations, and those are local nature reserves and local wildlife sites, or called sites of nature conservation importance in Surrey. And then finally, we are to map irreplaceable habitats as defined by a government list, which will be going out to consultation later this year. But most importantly for Surrey includes ancient woodland. So that would be our step one. We will end up with a nice base map of the existing areas for nature that we have. So the next part that we will do is work out what outcomes we actually want for nature recovery. And so we'll be reviewing pre-existing strategies and policies. So for example, that might be the National Landscape Management Plan for the Surrey Hills. So it will be a nice big area. And then we'll have a national pollinator corridor, or beelines, that some of you may have heard of. Then we'll have potentially a neighbourhood biodiversity plan. And then we'll go into the stakeholder engagement and asking people what they really want, and we'll express these on the map in various ways. And as you can see, we end up with a big old mess of competing priorities and outcomes that will either be from those legacy strategies or from the stakeholder engagement. So we go back to what we've already got, and we look at how we prioritize all of those competing actions and wants and needs for nature recovery. And we'll do this by looking at a couple of key different principles. So we'll be looking at the delivery of key benefits for nature recovery. Marissa earlier in her talk said something which has really resonated, in that this is a nature first strategy. This is nature's voice, and so we need to make sure that although we consider everything as much as possible, when we come down to it, this is for the benefit of nature's recovery. So second prioritization will be obviously looking at the delivery of the stakeholder priorities that will come out of the next couple of months of engagement. We'll be looking at how nature recovery in Surrey can contribute to those national environment objectives that I outlined a minute ago, considering how they can deliver wider environmental benefits, and then also considering where it's actually deliverable. So we'll be talking to landowners and land managers over the next few months as well about, their interest and wants to actually deliver nature recovery across the county. So yes, the likelihood is we'll end up with much more targeted areas for the creation of new habitat. So here you can see we'd be connecting up particular areas. And then also we'll be looking at that sort of classic connecting corridors. So once we have all of those things synthesized and prioritized, this is sort of more likely a slightly cleaner map of what it might look like in the future. Obviously completely the demonstration map on paint. So I think for those of us who've been around for a while, it's what is different this time. I think we've done this before in certain circumstances, but actually there's a lot that's different this time. So we do have the biodiversity opportunity areas, and they have been well adopted in Surrey and well used in Surrey. Many of them feature in our local plans, and they do have a good consideration in the planning process. However, they had no statutory underpinning. They were just adopted as policies within a local plan. So local nature recovery strategies are a requirement under the Environment Act of 2021. They aren't a policy, and they would require a change in legislation in order to be dropped. Equally, following the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill amendments, strategic development, minerals and waste, neighbourhood and local plans must all take account of the local nature recovery strategy in their creation. So that gives it another level of importance that didn't exist before. And also there is direct relation to funding mechanisms, which didn't exist with previous plans. So the key one that exists at the moment is biodiversity net gain, which is another policy that came out of the Environment Improvement Plan, the Environment Act, and essentially requires any development that is undertaken to achieve a 10% net gain in biodiversity. If they deliver that biodiversity net gain within the local nature recovery strategy, they get a 15% uplift in the amount of units that they can deliver. So it allows us to target particularly where that biodiversity net gain will be delivered. But beyond that, we'll also be looking at how the government are looking at how they can target all of their various funding streams. Following the EIP, they've set up a whole plethora of different ones, including sort of climate funds and farming and protected landscape funds and all sorts. And so they'll be using the local nature recovery strategies as a way to target that funding more effectively.
2 minutes left, Adam.
Perfect. I think that's about spot on. So who are we? Surrey Nature Recovery. You would have seen this nice logo going all the way through the presentation. We, as I said, Surrey County Council are the responsible authority for delivering the local nature recovery strategy, but we are very much delivering it in partnership. So we have a steering group which features all of those people listed there. So Surrey Nature Partnership, the arm's length government bodies, so Natural England, Environment Agency and Forestry Commission, and then also Surrey Wildlife Trust and the Surrey Biodiversity Information Centre, but also some representations from land managers from the NFU and CLA, but also the Hampton Estate, who aren't listed there actually. And then aside that, we have a supporting authorities group. So this is all of the districts and boroughs and Natural England that feature within Surrey form part of that supporting authorities group. And under the legislation, they do get a right of refusal for the local nature recovery strategy. So we'll be working with them over the next 8 months as we develop it to ensure that it aligns with the sort of principles and policies that they have, and that doesn't happen. So in terms of how we actually deliver it, yep, I am the Surrey Nature Recovery Lead, and I'm employed by Surrey County Council. And so it is my great privilege really to be delivering the first local nature recovery strategy. And then I am supported by 3 technical working groups. So we have the stakeholder engagement and design group who put on this webinar today, and that is being led by Lisa in the Surrey Nature Partnership. The data and mapping technical group, who will be doing all of that sort of spatial prioritization and producing those final maps, and that's led by myself. And then aside all of that is the species technical group, who will be specifically looking at the priorities and needs of our species of conservation concern, and that is being led by Mike Waite at Surrey Wildlife Trust. And so that is all of us. So just quickly, how we funded, all of the NRS funding is from a specific funding pot from DEFRA. So it is not taken from county council funding. So nothing is being diverted from any of the work of the county council that Marissa was talking about earlier. It is a specific funding pot to deliver local nature recovery strategies. So very quickly, when is all of this happening? We are hoping to publish by next summer 2025. Here there is a sort of a whole host of engagement that we're hoping to do over the summer, which Lisa will go into further in a second. And there will be a formal public consultation on the draft strategy early next year. And yes, that's largely it. Thank you very much.